Hola, my friend. I'm Melissa V. Cartwright, and welcome to the Passionate Performer podcast. You have a voice that deserves to be heard. And you also deserve to have a performance career where you don't feel like you're sacrificing who you are to meet the demands of the industry. I'm a Latin singer-songwriter, actress, and voice coach with 25 years of experience. And so I get it. I understand the grind, the joys, the ups and downs, and everything in between. We cannot keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. So we are here to help you problem solve those challenges, figure out why we're feeling the way we do, and give you the next right step. We are not here to mess around. We are ready to take action. Let's go. Thank you so much for joining me for this very special episode of the Passionate Performer podcast. This is a question that is probably the scariest thing to ask for any singer. How do I know if I have a vocal injury? My voice feels really, really off. Maybe you're experiencing pain when you sing. Maybe you're experiencing this weird absence of sound, like you go to sing a note, and then it feels as though somebody pushed the pause button on your audio and then pushed play again. And you can't explain why your voice is doing that. There are so many variables involved with the sounds that we make, and because it's where our bodies are producing this, it's very personal. We know how personal singing is. And so I thought, instead of me trying to answer this question by myself, it was a good time to bring back an encore episode. Back in season 1, episode 37, we had the lovely Kerri Ho on the podcast. My friend Kerri is a beautiful and thriving, very successful vocal coach and performing artist herself, hailing from Melbourne, Australia. Her accent is just simply magical. And you may follow her on YouTube as the Songbird Tree, where she helps singers get grounded, take flight, and sing. This does not signal the end of your singing career, which I know is the biggest lie screaming in your brain right now. And there's tons of stuff on the internet that you're seeing. You hear of artists that lose their voices or undergo surgery. I mean, Cynthia Erivo, one of everybody's favorite singer right now, was recently interviewed by BBC, and there was even some misinformation from a vocal anatomy and functional standpoint about how the voice works, and saying that, serums and syrups soothe the voice, but when the reality is, well, nothing actually touches the vocal folds or we would choke, right? So you have so much access to information, even including this podcast episode. You don't know who to listen to, right? It's really hard. This is why I want you to hear this episode, because Kerri is discussing the importance of building a team of vocal professionals that are going to help you succeed, even when you have a situation where there is a vocal injury that you need help rehabilitating from. Your journey may not look exactly like hers, but the next steps that you can take, you can draw inspiration from what she is going to share with you today. Let's dive in. I know of this story firsthand because I've had the honor of you inviting me into this journey. But for anyone listening, Kerri has a pretty powerful story. First off, just a quick recap of how you started teaching, because I think that enhances the power of your story that you're going to share here in recent years, even more so. Because a lot of people will look at us as voice teachers or voice professionals and think, oh, she's always aspired to do that. But that wasn't necessarily your story. So you want to give us a quick recap as to how you started teaching.
Okay, how long do you have? But yes, quick recap.
I know, right? Yeah, you did not go to school for this, right? So tell us a little bit about how that started and how you got into it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, no, I didn't start off doing this as my career. My dream was always to study music at university, but when I told my parents that, they, not because they were being mean, but because they really didn't want me to starve or to do, to basically struggle, they were like, well, if you're going to do that, you may as well go and live on the streets now, kind of thing, right? And so obviously they were not very supportive of that for good reason. So I went into a corporate career. I did a Bachelor of Commerce at university. and I started out in one of the big four global accounting firms. And of course, after a couple of years of doing that, I just realized that this was just not me. It was sucking the soul out of me. Music has always been my thing, and even as I was in the corporate world, even when I was studying commerce at university, I was already teaching music. So I was teaching piano at music schools and stuff, and all the things. And but I never thought, one day I'm gonna be a singer, a professional singer, and a vocal coach. That literally never crossed my mind. I just thought I was gonna climb the corporate ladder. I was gonna be successful, quote unquote, and my parents were going to be so proud of me. But 2 years after being in the corporate world, I just couldn't do it anymore. So I did quit my job. My parents stopped speaking to me for about 3 months because they just couldn't understand my decision. I was doing well in the corporate world. That's a thing, right? I got to put on a suit every day, and I was getting paid, well, and all that kind of stuff, and all the status and the prestige, I guess, that comes from having a corporate career. So they didn't understand what on earth I was trying to do. But I just knew, Mel, in the depths of my soul and my heart, that I had to give this music career a go. I just had to step out, take a leap of faith, and just see what happened, And I figured, look, if it fails, I can always go back, right? And so that's what I did. So in 2004, I quit my job and I went, all right, here goes. But here's the thing, my singing teacher at the time, so I was just a singing student at the time, okay? I was just trying to improve my voice. I was having all the difficulties that every singer experiences. I didn't have a high range. I felt like I was cracking all the time. I felt like I had two very distinct parts of my voice that just wouldn't marry together. All the things, all the things that we've experienced, but also our students have experienced. And then my singing teacher said to me, you know what, Kerri, I reckon you would make an excellent vocal coach. How about I train you up and you can actually take over some of my students, because she was going on tour. So I don't know whether it was she saw potential in me or she just wanted to hand over her students. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I'm so thankful to her. So shout out to Zerafina if you're listening by any chance. She was the one who gave me my big break, and even put the thought into my head that you could actually be a voice coach and that you could actually be a professional singer full time. So that's where it all started. Yeah.
So thankful for her faith in you, because then after that, you were just faithful in doing what you were doing, launched a YouTube channel. How many? You've reached over 100 million, correct? Wait, what's your big number? What's of your
Right. No,
viewership
I've
right now?
102,000 subscribers, not 100 million. 102,000 subscribers.
In my head, it's 100 million in my head.
Yeah, right.
So substantial still. Like, I mean, just to have that following, and that's how I came. That's how I was able to find you. I mean, like YouTube, and growing that, and now you have a very successful voice teaching business and everything, and you are a professional singer. You have a beautiful voice. In fact, I may link some of your just your singing videos in this episode so that our listeners can really enjoy you. So I mean, there's this perception, because we're kind of debunking a lot of this, right? Like, you kind of said, why not, to trying, being a voice teacher and singer, and look what you've done because of that. There's this perception that because we are voice professionals,
Yes.
be it as artists, as teachers, that we're also immune to certain things, right? Like, and there's this stigma in our world that, thank heavens, we are seeing dissipate, that if there is a singer with vocal injury, they did something wrong. They did something wrong in their technique. They misused somehow. They did this, they did that, and all the onus is on poor technique. And again, like I said, thankfully, we're seeing a shift in that. We're hearing more stories. And yours, my dear, is a very powerful story that wasn't necessarily that. Can you walk us through, your journey with vocal injury, and like, yes, voice teacher, professional singer, and this is what went down?
Yep, 100%, and so before I go into my own story, I guess I just wanted to paint a picture, like when we talk about say sports people, like celebrity, famous sports people, right? And they injure themselves. You know, everybody sees that as really normal. Like, yeah, of course, you know, because they're playing their sport at the highest elite level. They're training for hours and hours every day. It's clearly normal if they have an injury, you know. And I just want to explain to all your listeners out there that as vocal professionals, we are also athletes. We're vocal athletes, right? The way we use our voice, it's very muscular, right? The vocal folds themselves are muscle, right? And everything around it is muscle. And so, you know, at the same time, you and I, as vocal professionals and other people out there who do the same thing, and even just those who just use their voice a lot in their profession or in their day-to-day life, we're operating at a very high level in terms of just the vocal usage, right, and vocal load. And so that's why we're actually more prone to getting injured because of the, you know, the level of which we are using our voice, you know. And so my journey was, this was last year. So it was only last year, my goodness, I just realized. Yeah. So last year, you know, after I'd been sick for quite a bit, so I'd you know, in Melbourne at around, I think it was April or so last year, there was like this crazy flu epidemic that kind of just swept through the whole city. And people were getting really, really sick with the flu. Like, I'm talking about in bed for days, coughing your insides out, like just getting super sick, right? So I got that. And I ended up quite sick for a while, and this incessant cough that I had just wouldn't go away. And it was a really bad cough. You know those kind of coughs, Mel, where it really hurts your throat? Like, I'm not talking about a little,
Yeah.
you know, I'm talking about your vocal folds slapping like crazy and the, you know, crazy trauma, right? So I had this crazy cough, but, you know, a couple of weeks later, I started to feel a bit better. And, you know, like, you know, our work is in the voice profession. I can't necessarily just decide I'm going to take a whole month off, you know, just like that, right? Because if I don't work, I don't get paid. So that's just the reality. And you know, I thought, look, I am feeling a lot better. I still have this cough, but I'm going to have to get back to work. You know, so as the diligent, you know, Asian hardworking girl that I have been raised to be, I went back to work, right? And you know, in terms of, you know, my day-to-day work, it looks like 6 to 8 hours of non-stop teaching. And in the teaching, I am demoing, you know, vocal techniques. I am singing hard songs that my students are trying to, you know, nail, right? All day, every day. But I'm also a professional singer. I perform, so I'm also rehearsing my repertoire. I'm also warming up my voice and working out my voice every day, and obviously going to rehearsals and doing the gigs and doing those things. So it looks like huge vocal usage every single day, right? And so little did I know, you know, as I was getting back into work and kind of, you know, getting back into all the things, I was starting to feel a bit off with my voice. So I was like, why is my voice so tired all the time? I was finding that I was, at the end of the day, my voice, my literal pitch of my voice would lower. Like, I've got quite a sing-songy voice, you know. You know, people kind of tell me I sound a little bit like a Disney princess, which I take as a compliment, but
You totally do, and you're my favorite.
Mel, you're so sweet. Anyway, and but by the end of the day, Mel, I would sound like this. You know, I'd be like speaking right down here, and I couldn't lift it. You know, and you know, after I just thought I'm probably just tired. I need to steam. I need to do all the things that I know to do and everything. But after a while, I realized that this just wasn't normal. So I ended up going to see an ENT and a speech pathologist. And and here's one thing I need singers to understand. When you go and see an ENT, if you are sort of thinking that it might be something wrong and you want to get checked out, go and see someone who is an ENT, who is a voice specialist. They must be a laryngologist, okay? Because here's what happened to me, all right? I already knew that, but in Australia, I don't know what it's like in the US, but you need to get a referral from a GP, right, to see these ENTs. You can't just go directly to an ENT. And I went to my GP and I said, look, I'm having voice issues. Can you please, you know, just give me a referral? And I asked him, is this ENT a voice specialist? And do you know what he said to me? He goes, there's no such thing, Kerri. Well, they wouldn't have any work if all they did was specialise in the throat. And I thought, what the... But, you know, he was the GP. I didn't know what to say to that. And I just went, okay, whatever. So I went with what he did. And lo and behold, I was right. You know, he had actually referred me to an ENT who was not a voice specialist. And so she gave me a laryngoscopy, I think it's called, where they put something through your nose and into your throat, and they saw nothing. So they were like, your voice looks fine, it's healthy, it's good. So I went away going, but there's something wrong, and I don't believe you. Not that I was trying to be negative, but I just know that I know my voice and I know how it's supposed to work, and it wasn't working that way. So I ended up then needing to go back to my GP and saying, you need to refer me to. And then I did my research and I found the person who I knew was a laryngologist. Anyway, so cut a long story short, finally I got to the right person, right? And guess what? They did find something. So that's the first thing I want all singers to hear. You must be very strong in requesting an ENT that is a voice specialist, and better for you to go and do your research yourself and actually ask to be referred to a certain doctor rather than just trusting your GP to know, because they are general practitioners, right? At the end of the day, they don't know everything and the intricacies of the voice. Yeah, so because otherwise you end up paying double. I paid for 2 tests that the first test I paid for, it was a whole waste of money, right? Because I didn't see anything, because I didn't have the strong instruments to see, right? Anyway, so then I went to the right person. Lo and behold, the words that no singer ever wants to hear, I heard. Kerri, don't freak out, but you have nodules. And my heart sunk. It just went from kaboom. Because I'd been told in the previous test that there was nothing, I really wasn't expecting anything like that. I knew something was going on, but I didn't expect that, Mel, right? So it was like a big, whoa, but the first thing the speech path said to me was, Kerri, I know what you're thinking, because you're a voice coach and everything. You're probably thinking this is your fault, and you're probably thinking that you have somehow done something wrong. Don't go there. You haven't. It's because you're a vocal athlete and you work at such a high level, and so you're very prone to injury. And from what you've told me, this is what it sounds like has happened. You had a horrible cough, and coughing is so traumatic to the vocal folds, right? You probably hadn't fully recovered, and then you had to go back to work. So with not fully recovered vocal folds, you then went back to work. You had to use your voice so insanely, heavy load all day, every day. Your voice just didn't have time to heal. You probably pushed a little bit because you were trying to overcompensate. You're trying to get through your day. You know what I mean? So like when your voice isn't optimal. So in other words, my voice was already a bit frayed from all the coughing. You kind of go, you overcompensate. You go, I'm going to have to work harder. Do you know what I mean? Your body just does that. It's not like you're trying to, but your body just goes, you got to get through this, girl. So I'm going to push it. I'm going to work a bit harder. And she goes, and probably because of that, as well as your acid reflux issues, because I've got acid reflux and LPR, which just sits in your throat, and and that irritates it as well. So all of that combined is probably why, But she also reassured me, your nodules are the size of a pinprick. They can be pinprick all the way through to a pea, like a big, pea. It's a pinprick, yeah. So she was like, this is completely solvable. We're going to get you out. And I had a gig in a month's time. And I said, should I cancel my gig? And they were like, no, we're going to help you. We're going to do the therapy. You're going to be fine. Oh, sorry, I think my gig was 2 months away. And I was ready to cancel everything, Mel. I was like, do I cancel everything? Do I stop teaching? Do I this? Do I that? They're like, no. You're a voice professional. You need to keep on doing what you do. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about strategies around, just how long you're teaching at a time, breaks, all the things, And so then I went through a process of therapy and everything. And I'm so happy to say that not only am I nodule free, and, I had a follow-up, of course, a couple of months later, and my vocal folds were pristine, apparently, and very, very healthy. But I learned so much about not only my voice, but also my identity in that, which I'm sure we'll get into. But it was just, like, at the time when I heard the news, it was like the worst news on the planet. And I thought, that's it. This is the end of me. I really did. I actually thought, this is the end of my voice career. I'm going to have to go back to the corporate world or something. I don't know, right? But it certainly wasn't. And if anything, was actually a new beginning for me.
There's so much to unpack just in that little bit, because you talked so much about the importance of like intuition and your gut feeling and knowing your voice. Like you mentioned identity. And if you take anything away from this conversation, is that if you're a performing artist who does work with a voice professional, they are a tool, they are an aid. Kerri, you just listed a whole bunch of voice professionals that you saw in the medical field as well as, just in teaching. And so they're not the end all be all, right? They're tools, they're guides, they're aids. Had it not been for your own, the trust in yourself and knowing your voice and the knowledge that you have, to push back and advocate for yourself. So yes, 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 please advocate for yourself. And and this is the beautiful part of the story, that it did not derail you, right? Through voice therapy, and I mean, even having all the head knowledge too, to when it happens to you, going through the very human process of fear, and then, okay, wait a second, retooling, refiguring out, and all the things. I
Right.
still remember, just from girlfriend to girlfriend, you coming
Yes.
to me and saying, oh my gosh, this happened. And then to hear them like give their blessing that you could still perform too, because I was concerned for that as well, from a artist standpoint.
Right.
So tell us then what happened, because
Yep.
this just wasn't any gig. At being the music theater nerd that you are, this was pretty near and dear to your heart, an incredible
Very.
opportunity. And so
Yes.
I'm going to be quiet because I don't want to ruin it, but I want you to tell us about this opportunity.
Sure.
And then your story of how you performed, and how
Yeah.
you felt afterwards.
Yeah, love it. Thank you. Yeah, and, and first of all, though, every case is different. So it's not that
Of course.
everyone should go out and do what I did, but I think it's about definitely getting your crew, your team, right? You got to get the right ENT, the right SLP. You've got to have all those things in place, and then go with their guidance, right? Once you've found the right people. Anyway, to go back to that, yeah, they said no, no, no. We don't want you to stop gigging. We don't want you to stop teaching. But what we want you to do is to re-look at your calendar and go, okay, where in my day can I actually put more vocal naps or breaks in, right? So that you actually have adequate rest, period. And I, yeah, so I went through a whole process of just like reordering my calendar, making sure that I was really managing my vocal load better. But, going back to your specific question about the gig. So prior to this, I had expressed interest to perform. So in Melbourne, there's this organisation called Broadway Unplugged. So shout out to Danielle and the guys over there. They're amazing people, and they exist to basically. It's like a whole nother avenue to perform musical theatre, without being in shows and stuff like that, right? But it's also a way in, into the industry, because. They basically hold regular shows where industry people are there. You get to perform with professionals as well as up and coming emerging Broadway artists and things like that. So, and I had, very, very fortunate, had been chosen to be a part of the showcase that they were having in December. And bear in mind, I got diagnosed with the nodules in November. so, right? So I'm like, stop, but yeah, they were like, no, we're gonna get you back on track, right? And so the first thing, they prescribed for me medication for my acid reflux that we really needed to just sort of curb that down, so that wasn't an issue we needed to deal with. And then after that, it was therapy. But the thing is, I almost didn't do this gig, Mel. Like, I literally contacted the musical director, and I was like, I was open with him. I was like, look, this is what's happened. This is the diagnosis. I'm kind of freaking out right now, and I'm not sure if I can sing. But he was so supportive. He was like, look, we're happy to do whatever you're comfortable doing, Kerri. If you want to sing, we're so happy to have you, obviously. But if you can't, we can have you next time. And he was just so, he even talked about, what about changing the songs? We could even move the keys of the songs, whatever, finding a way to do it so that I wasn't feeling completely stretched and like I had to, you know what I mean? Like, yeah. And so I ended up doing it. So, with the help of him the musical director being so supportive of me, we chose songs that I just felt like I could nail, right? That I sing all the time, and I know like the back of my hand, that kind of thing, and also that I connect with really like strongly emotionally. And then with the SLP, we had 3 or 4 sessions. She was amazing. So Debbie Fineland, if you're out there listening, big shout out to you. Anybody in Melbourne who ever wants to see an SLP, you got to go and see her. She's the best in the business, and she was just so good. And it wasn't just the exercises she gave me and the reset she gave me, and just using my voice a lot more efficiently and things like that. It was actually the way she didn't make me feel bad for the fact that I had gotten nodules. You know what I mean? As a singing teacher, because that really hit me hard, Mel. I struggled when I first got that diagnosis. My first thought was, I'm a failure. That was my first thought. You know what I mean? I'm a failure. Who am I to be a teacher when, I've done this to myself, quote unquote, right? Yeah, and it hurt. Like I suffered for quite a while, just feeling like I was the worst. Do you know what I mean? But going through this process, and the support of the SLP, the music director at Broadway Unplugged, of friends like yourself and others, and my family who were praying for me and everything, I kind of realized, you know what? I got to dig deeper than this, because this does not define me. Do you know what I mean? I need to be able to be so sure in myself that it's not about how well. And I say this to my students all the time. I'm sure you do too, Mel. We tell them, how well or how not well you sing does not define who you are. You are much more precious than that. You're much more than your singing and your voice. Do you know what I mean? But I had to practice what I preached. Do you know what I mean? Like when it happened to me, I had to preach to myself, girl. Like look in the mirror and go, girl, you are precious. You are valued beyond your voice. And the fact that you got a vocal injury, it doesn't mean that you're a failure. It just means you're a voice professional who operates at a level so high that your vocal load is really heavy, and you're more prone to it. And now learn how to manage your voice better so that you can even get better. Do you know what I mean? And I can tell you, Mel, that on the day of the gig, right, I was obviously really freaking out and everything, but I was also really excited. I couldn't believe that I was actually going to do this, even after all that had happened with the diagnosis and everything. It ended up being the most incredible experience of my life. Like, I think one of the best gigs I've ever done. And I remember seeing my SLP afterwards and her asking me, how did you go? And I was like, I reckon I sung the best I've ever sung up until that point. And it's like how does that happen? Do you know what I mean? But didn't you just say you had nodules a month ago? Like, you know what I mean? How does this happen? And it is because of digging deep and going through the process of therapy, obviously, but also mentally speaking, resetting my identity and not letting that derail me. Because you know this, our minds, our hearts, our voice, they're all connected. Our body, it's all connected. So if you go around going, I'm such a failure, I can't sing, blah blah blah, I'm not good enough because I had a vocal injury, then that's what's going to come out of your voice. Do you know what I mean? But if you sort of stand your ground and you tell yourself that you are beyond, that's not your identity and you're beyond that, and you just go out and you just give your heart, like it just changes everything. At least that was my experience, but it just took me to a whole nother level, Mel, in many ways. So while I don't wish this upon anybody, and if I could have learned these lessons a different way, I would choose that. But to be honest, I'm actually really thankful for this experience, because it really changed me. It changed me in all ways, So yeah, anyway, blah, blah, blah. I can keep
No,
going for.
Carrie, I know. We really could. I really could, because I mean, when you're forced to make a pivot the way that you were forced to, like you said, you're thankful that was it hard, of course, but look at who you are now. Look at how I'm sure that's transformed the way you even teach now. And you shared a little of that performance, and of all the times I've seen you sing from afar digitally, because one day I believe it's going to happen in person, but I have to agree, it's one of my favorite performances I've ever seen you have.
Oh wow.
And I think maybe I don't want to take away from just the clarity of your vocals or how beautiful holistically the performance was, but also I think knowing the story, knowing the journey of what took place, getting there. It was emotional to experience too and watch, knowing what you've gone through. And yay to the power of discipline as well, to go through the therapy, to be disciplined with everything that you were prescribed to do, and how now you can encourage your singers and all of us listening as well, and thank you again for this reminder. I feel like this is a theme that keeps popping up, and I do believe in providence. I don't think it's just a coincidence of this constant loving reminder that we're more than our voices,
Yes,
and
absolutely.
that was
Absolutely.
probably, would you agree, that's the biggest lesson, the biggest pivot for you? Sure, your voice is amazing. I mean, your voice has this beautiful clarity to it, and tone and rehabilitation and strength and blah blah blah, but so that no matter what comes your way next, right? Both the good, the bad, challenging, everything, because you kind of had a reset in your identity,
Yeah.
you're that's the biggest gift. Would you agree with that statement?
100%, yeah, because it was liberation. Like, going through this experience set me free. It set me free from defining myself from, the quality of my voice or the quality of a performance. We all have good and bad performances. You do it enough, you're gonna mess a gig up. It's okay. You know what I mean? Yeah, right. And yeah. Yeah. So the liberation, I think, was huge. Yeah, the liberation to to not sort of identify myself so closely with the quality of my voice, um, really helped me to let go of like tension and I don't know, just whatever hindrances. And because of that, I honestly do, and I say this with greatest humility and gratitude. I think I sing better than ever now. And a big part of it is what I had gone through with this. I mean, I learned how, I sort of learned how to structure my day better, so that I could manage my vocal load better. I learned really precious exercises to reset between lessons and everything, that would just help me get my voice back into, optimal positioning after you've, just sort of used it a lot and you feel quite exhausted, right? Because if you keep pushing through on the exhaustion without resetting, that's when you start to accentuate, some problems, right? But yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing has been just going back to my identity, as a precious human being who is loved by God. Whether or not I sing well or not sing well, perform here or don't perform there, or have a vocal injury or whatever, and that's been absolutely huge.
Awesome. Beautiful. Beautiful. So I know that you are still teaching and doing amazing work. So if any of our listeners are interested in working with you, connecting with you, where can they find you?
So my website is thesongbirdtree.com. So please do go and check it out, and drop me a line. I would love to hear from you. If you have a singing question, if you want to ask me about anything, do ways to work with me, etc. But yeah, I mean, at the moment, I mean, I'm doing all the things in terms of teaching. So the one-on-one private lessons, as well as group classes.
I love it. I love it. We will link all the things in the show notes for sure. Kerri, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me to have this conversation with you, Mel. You're amazing.
You're amazing too. I hope that you are absolutely filled with hope, encouragement, and oh my gosh, yes, I can exhale. I know exactly what to do. My friend, let us know. Feel free to share with us how this episode encouraged you and what it is that you're going to be doing next. You can connect with me or Kerri on social media, on Instagram. Please leave a review, rate this podcast so that other singers like you also find the encouragement. If you want more resources about how to learn how your voice works functionally from a health perspective, and also how to sing in ways that provide freedom and stamina for what you are doing as a performing singer, check out the Passionate Performer program. We are always accepting members. You can get all the details in the show notes below. Happy singing, my friend.